direct impromptu enlightenment. Okay, they want me to do a demonstration of mediumship, and since we have Elizabeth and Florence. Francis.
No, you're channeling Florence Foster
It's
Jenkins.
been like the name game with Francis.
All
We're
day.
so sorry we didn't get her last name right. Okay, so we're going to give it a shot and see how it goes here. It's kind of, I didn't really make an appointment with my guides to do this, so I hope they forgive me in terms of just throwing them into it. Okay, so do you guys want to ask me questions first, or do you want me to just give you information? How do you want to do it?
Do you want to explain a little bit about how it works for you? Because I know since you're a little girl, like you would see spirit, and it
Right.
just, and it was passed down through your family and your
Right.
grandparents and your mother and everybody saw spirit.
Well, I don't necessarily know that my parents themselves saw spirit.
okay.
My sister has mediumistic abilities, and my grandmother, and my uncle on my father's side, and then my two aunts on my mother's side. They were psychometrists. He was a hands-on healer, and my grandmother saw visions. I wasn't clear as to whether she actually went into trance or whether she went to sleep. I just remember her saying that she had visions, and she used to see the angel of death come when she was sitting with friends who were transitioning.
Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. So it was for me. I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. But I have a little bit different personality than she did. I'm kind of like, yeah, that sounds great, woohoo! Me, I'd rather see somebody different. But I know I know that was her mission, was that she went and worked with people who were transitioning. So.
But they didn't tell you, and so you were saying when you
They
were
never
little,
told me.
Yeah.
I didn't actually. My dad never said anything until I was probably 16 or 17, and my mom never said anything until probably, I want to say, like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Because weren't they, when you were little, coming under your bed and sitting on the bed with you?
Oh yeah, they were all
and wanting
around.
to talk with you.
They
and
were
saying,
having parties in my room.
Yeah, and saying, hey, I know you can see me. I want to talk
Yes.
with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had before I learned how to protect myself, I had some pretty scary experiences before I realized that I had guides. I had, because I know that people say that, there isn't vibrations that you should be suspect of because there are no bad vibrations. However, my perspective is that even though like attracts like, and that's how they explain it, I was just an innocent child.
Right.
So there was no way that I was, able to really attract. But I think what it was those were the stronger vibrations, and so I was allowed to see them so that I would become aware of what was happening. So I didn't really appreciate it a whole lot, because I remember there was one time where I was actually scared so badly that I couldn't speak, I couldn't move.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really one of those times where you just like go, okay, this is what it's like to be completely paralyzed. It was terrible. But it didn't last very long, but it lasted long enough that it got my attention. And then as I got older, I realized that it was something that just sort of came naturally, and then I took formal training.
And so how do you
Understood.
work today with it? How do you work with your guides? I mean, do you have several, or do they all?
I have a band that I work
Okay.
with. I call them my Band of Gold. And in traditional spiritualism, mediumship, which is what I was trained in, we have a gatekeeper, a protector, a master teacher, a master doctor, and message guides. But because I've also done a lot of healing work, I also have a master healer and healers. So my band, I have my gatekeeper and I have two protectors.
Okay.
And people are always like, well, what are their names? And I have absolutely no idea what their names are, because that just wasn't important to us. And it's not necessarily important to me, and they don't care. So I have two protectors. One is more of a Roman centurion sort of looking guy, and the other one's more like a game character, sort of like, if you guys remember Lord of the Rings, he sort of looks like the Dwarf King.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, he sort of looks like
Neat,
him.
neat, neat.
And I don't spend a lot of time with my my master teacher or my spirit doctor. I just don't see them very often. But I do spend a lot of time with my healer, and I have 3 healers under her, and then I have 3 message guides that are always there. So my message guides stand off of this shoulder here, off my, what is this? I forgot my rock. My right side. My healers stand off of this side, and they're always there in messages too, because the work that I do, the intention is for healing. So sometimes I'll ask them to intercede. I know that other people work with angels and stuff like that. I really didn't want to learn any of that kind of stuff. I'm pretty impatient when it comes to my mediumship. So I didn't want to learn cards. I didn't want to learn about archangels or anything like that. I just wanted to surround myself in white light, make an appointment for my guides to be there, and then I wanted them to, the agreement was they don't get past the gate unless they're of a higher vibration, or unless it's necessary for the person that I'm reading for, which we call the sitter, to have the information, in which case both of my protectors are standing between me and the spirit person, and of course my sitter, in case it gets to the point where I have to ask them to leave, which has only really happened a couple of times, but it was extremely healing for my sitter, so it was very important. But other than that, if they're not of a higher vibration, they don't get past the gatekeeper. And then once they get past the gatekeeper, both protectors really check them out to make sure that they're really of the highest vibration possible, and sort of make themselves known as the bouncers. And this is just the agreement that I've had. And it seems very unspiritual and almost like unsacred for me, because a lot of people have very specific ways that they do it. But because of my personality, I just want to go in, get the evidential information, and move forward and have fun. I don't really want, if it stops being fun, I don't really want to do it anymore.
Right.
And because laughter and joy is the highest vibration, that's really where I want to keep people, and so that's why I work that way. I'm sure that other people work in different ways, but that's my choice on how I want to do it. And I sort of have, if you haven't noticed, a little bit of a surly personality, so that's sort of how I approach it. I also bring into it an empathic side, because I can feel people. I can see, feel, and hear spirit, but I can also feel people. And I can, because I'm psychic, I can read their energy. And it doesn't, people are like, can you read auras? And I can't really read auras. I don't even see auras, but I can see you, and I can see what's going on with you. And I'm really good at listening to what people are saying to me, and I can, because of the empathic side, I can really get to the meat of their stories. So even though I'm a medium, the psychic side comes through, but then my training as a metaphysician comes through, and then just life experience stuff comes through. I can read body language and things like that. And then the healing side, because of all the healing that I've done over the years as a body worker. So it's kind of a mixed bag when you come in, because to see me, you're not really sure what the universe is going to provide you with. However, it often, I've only had a couple times where the person has really not felt like they've received what they're looking for, even though it's beyond what their question has been or what their concern has been. So that's sort of how it is that I work. I do have a framework in which I work in, where I, for a long time I had spirit people who were on the mother side stand to the feminine side, or the left side of the body. And when you're learning, that's really helpful, because as you know, you're sort of trying to figure it out and step out of yourself and go, is this what's really happening? Have a little trust and be able to interpret what it is that's being said. And even though they lower their vibration and I raise my vibration so that we can communicate, in the beginning for you may have noticed, it's sort of like talking to someone in the pitch dark in the middle of a hurricane through a brick wall. So it can be kind of tricky in terms of getting the translation through, although I don't know if that occurred for you, but that when we first started actually doing, and some of that is trusting yourself, and some of that is
trust.
And for now, what I've done is that I don't even worry about trusting myself. I just trust them. I just trust my guides. And if I say something that doesn't sound right, then I use my intelligence to sort of go back and figure out how it would relate to them. And then there's also psychic amnesia, where you'll say something to someone and they'll be like, no, and then they'll go home and they're like, oh, yeah. And all the while your guides are going, no, that's correct.
It's
so,
correct. They're not.
Yeah, so I don't always push those scenarios, because I don't really want to make the person, no, really, that's what
They're dead.
And I also, sometimes I don't know too if they're skeptical, because their skepticism will keep them from hearing the truth. So I'm really blessed that I don't have a lot of that, because it's challenging to convince them while you're telling them that their spirit person is standing there, and they're like, no, that's not them. Okay, well, they're telling me it is. What do you do in that scenario? You just have to go with what the spirit says. And since I know that my team has never ever let me down, I just know that it has to be the truth. So,
Mhm.
Sweet.
so
Oh,
that's
wow.
kind of how that works.
Would you give
Um,
us a little example of it today on us?
We'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens. Let's see.